The second speech is by Ravi, and his evaluator is Al Davis. Al told me about vacations the following. My most recent vacation was a couple of months ago in Paris. One of my fondest memories is being able to go into any cafe and get decent coffee without waiting in line for someone to get their double Frappuccino caramel mocha latte with half decaf, followed by another person ordering something equally obnoxious and annoying. And that's when the line is short. Al, you have the objectives for Ravi.
I don't have objectives. I have the title of the speech, which is Trade Wars. The speech is to be, I believe, 5 to 7 minutes. Is that correct, Ravi? And I'm doing something different this time. Since I don't have the objectives, I'll talk about this. I'm using a form which I got from Pathways to do the evaluation. And this is something that I will save as a PDF and then email to Ravi for two reasons. One is it's a whole lot easier for me to write my, and secondly, if anyone has any hope of reading my handwriting, it's not possible, including me. So this is a way you'll be able to refer to it later.
Okay. Thank you, Al.
I wanted to mention one other thing. If anyone's interested in how to do this, I'll stick around after the meeting for a few minutes and show people how to do it.
I thought about what I was going to talk about, and I thought this sounds like a very contemporaneous topic to talk about, which is trade wars. And when I prepared my speech, the events are moving so fast that I almost changed it this morning again. Trade wars, actually, this is a very complex subject. Most of us think it's an issue of trade in one country or one party and the second party. But actually, it can be a lot more than that. And as I'll give you some examples, at a minimum, you can have trade issues, which is affected with the economic well-being, also affects the employment and overall longevity of the people's happiness. And not only that, also is greatly affected by geopolitics, which most of us may or may not think about. So as I have been studying in the last 3, 4, 5 days, the number one issue that US has on trade is with China. US exports $150 billion to China, approximately, give or take, and buys $500 billion a year. So there is a very large deficit between the two countries. And you could say, why is that? Well, there is a history which actually is behind most of the trade issues. But there is also a personal inclination of which issues to take up. And in this case, Mr. Trump has been particularly focused on the trade. He made this a big issue in his campaign and really is taking it on seriously now. It's not only the money part that affects the trade, especially between US and China. And by the way, if you take a poll of majority of the people in this country, especially the ones who are involved with trade and who are involved with businesses and so on, there is a broad consensus that we have to do something about our relationship with China as far as the trade is concerned. of the major things that really rubs us bad way is the technology theft. To do a business in China, to sell something to China, they have made rules that you have to have a joint venture with somebody in China. And majority of those companies are Chinese companies that have been created by the Chinese government. Not only that, in the process, they ask you to share their technology with them. This is generally not done in most other countries. I think, in fact, I doubt if there are maybe one or two other countries where specifically they insist that you have to share the technology. But in general, that is not the case. The joint venture agreements that the companies have to sign, in effect, encourages stealing of your technology. And people go to China because it's a large market. It's a billion people market, and it's also relatively open market in the sense of not too many other companies have been there. It's only opened up like 4 decades, about 40 years back or 50 years back, China has opened up. And therefore, there is a great desire, and companies are willing to part with their technology. But in the process, what has happened is over 3 or 4 decades, China has taken that technology and implemented it, and therefore now they are competing against US companies for not really any value that the US companies got except for the market access. So what do we do? Donald Trump announced that he's going to take it on, and you could do 2 or 3 or 4 things. One of the things that you could do is have a diplomatic dialogue, which, to be honest with you, I do not know what kind of a diplomatic discussions have gone on between US and China, but we have not made too much apparent progress. So he took a stronger measure, and he basically imposed the tariffs, because that will get your attention. The first tariff that was announced was 25% on steel and 10% on aluminum, not just Chinese company, worldwide, he put it in. Because he said our companies are being unfairly treated. But Chinese came back, and they have announced to the equal amount that trade will do a whole brand of things, including coal, which the US exports to China, Vaseline, asphalt, plastics, recyclables, grease, large cars, etc. But the one that got the first response from the US government was soybeans. 50% of US produced soybeans go to China. And the soybeans is an ag product, and ag is a constituency of Trump. That's where bulk of the Midwest and the people who voted for Trump are there. So the soya prices went up because Chinese put in 25% target on that, and China knew it, that this will get a quick response. So Trump came back with a $12 billion relief to the farmers. These are political things. I have been hearing commentary which says, $12 billion just barely touches the surface, because in reality they're very worried that next year when these things are removed, we may lose the customer, they may go somewhere else, etc. Now, US does have more leverage because we buy $500 billion and we sell only $150 billion. But I'll give you small ways how these things affect people. Recyclables, all the waste that was being produced, rusted steel, etc., that we throw away, was being shipped to China. China was recycling that. First thing they did was stop it. Well, the company that's being affected big time is waste management. You never would think about it. So the effect that it takes place really is distributed and many times not predictable. But the good news is that there is a meeting now planned between Chinese and Americans in the next 2 weeks. So it is bringing some response, and I believe that I hope that it will produce some positive result. I want to just talk about one more thing. Until yesterday, everybody was focused on China, and then of course you know what happened to Europe and all that stuff. until Turkey was the reason why stock market went down yesterday. Because Turkey is a very small country, its GDP is less than 1% of US GDP, we hardly buy anything from them. However, Turkey's relationship is very important for our presence in Middle East. Because we use Turkish airports to fly out of there, and ISIS, etc. is something that, and Turkey has announced that they are going to buy a radar from Russia. Even though Turkey is being wooed as a member of, getting close to Europeans and so on and so forth. And that is what really got the whole process started. So the trade wars can really manifest in a very, very different way, and it could be complicated, but I believe that we should all keep our eyes open and see how it goes.
You are always eloquent and informative and very enjoyable. Next, we have table